AltaVista, the highest view in contractor marketing.
If you're not listening to The Angle, you will surely fall behind.
Are you going to exist in your space, or are you going to dominate?
Trust the process.
Are you planning for today or adapting for the future?
This is the AltaVista Angle. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the AltaVista Angle, the AltaVista Strategic Partners Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Hockel. Back today, we have Bryan Dunkel and McLaughlin, as well as our AltaVista sales manager, Ben Hollingsworth. Today, we're here to talk about effective cold calling strategies and how, outbound telemarketing and cold calling can still really work in 2026. Before we dive into the agenda today, we're going to start with a quick economic update and just maybe some feedback of what we're generally hearing from our clients and contractors. Ray, I'm going to kick it over to you to get us started on that.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Welcome. I know you guys are covered with snow up there in the Northeast. Wore a sweatshirt because it's cold in Florida today. So I know you were curious about why I was wearing it, but it's actually 60 here today. So, but we have no snow. Hope you guys are doing okay. Anyway, on the economic side, we really haven't seen much change, right? So last year we talked about some weakness that we were seeing. We've seen some improvements on the commercial side. We've definitely seen some improvement. A little more of a stabilization, I'd call it. Look, consumer confidence just came out about 10 minutes ago. The numbers were higher. You could deduct that's a good thing. I'm not sure there's any tangible evidence to say that there's improvement in the retail consumer and what they'll be spending. I think with the snow-covered country, we've got 38% of America under snow right now. Probably a lot of people hunkering down. We'll see what happens in the spring. In my experience, and when I was in contracting, when you had a winter like this, you had a nice maintenance pipeline coming out, a really nice maintenance pipeline, because nobody knows what's actually broken until this stuff melts. So I think prepare for that. On the negative sides, there are times when too much CapEx goes into snow removal, unfortunately, especially in the fringe markets, like say in Maryland, where they don't get a lot of snow, then they get dumped on and they have to allocate some of that money towards snow removal. Most of these markets are prepped for snow removal, so they have the appropriate budget. So I do think we'll need to wait and see what this spring looks like on the contracting side. I'm fairly optimistic on the commercial side. I do think the consumer is still pretty weak. And that's a fact. Some relief has to come, whether it be lower rates or some help on inflation. So again, people think inflation's coming down, but remember, inflation's cumulative. So when people say inflation's at 2.5%, that might be great, but we've got cumulative inflation over 22% for the last 5 years. So that has not come down, and that will detract from the consumer's ability to spend, in addition that their wages aren't really keeping up with inflation. And that's what you're seeing in the middle of the American economy right now. So we'll see where it goes. Don't have any more information there, but I do think this spring will be telling, and I'm very hopeful that we see some stabilization on the residential side.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And, as I've been out talking to people at a couple of trade shows this month, we've by and large heard something very similar of the snow has impeded us and kept our crews at home, which is just tough because there's only so much we can be doing. But I've also heard from some people where the snow has started to melt, maybe the Virginia area, who are like, we just got inundated with calls as soon as it kind of broke. So that was some positive stuff on the residential side that I picked up at a couple of recent events. And look, let's talk about a busy spring and how we go about getting after it, right? And do they know what's broken? They don't. We build a maintenance pipeline. As we're looking to accelerate this spring, cold calling, certainly old school, certainly been around a long time, but certainly an effective strategy. As we talk cold calling today, Ben on our team still makes a ton of cold calls. Bryan, Ray, myself have all made a ton over the years as well too. Thing we wanted to talk about first was the psychology of cold calling. So I don't know if anybody wants to step up and tackle this one, but really before we get into the nuts and bolts, kind of just about adopting that mindset. Anybody got anything?
I could jump in. I'm such a firm believer in picking up the phone and calling, right? Because it's a great differentiator. Anyone can send an email. right? You can send hundreds of emails. Not a lot of people, right, can pick up the phone. And it's something that still resonates to this day, right? When you pick up the phone and call someone, you get that instant connections, right? So obviously that's first and foremost. And for me, when you talk about psychology of cold calling, you got to deal with rejection, right? Um, it's important you separate the personal from the professional, right? So for me, you're going to get 100 no's before you get one yes, maybe 200 no's, right? But the idea is our no's are simply data points, right? They're data touch points, right? Every no you get is closer to a yes, right? And rejection is feedback. You're never losing, you're learning, right? So I think that's such an effective mindset to have, right? In terms of positivity, because you're going to get a ton of no's before you get that yes. But that's what makes the yes that much sweeter.
Yeah. And so, Ben, you still do a lot of cold calling. You get 100 no's. What are some things that you do to kind of keep that mindset fresh?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, throughout making the cold calls, you're always going to get the no's, and like Brian said, it's all about the feedback that you get. You can always be learning and understanding, where you went wrong or what you could have changed. It's always about making that next cold call, better as time goes on.
Cool. I always think too, and this really applies to sales in general, business in general, maybe life, the high and the low, right? So like if you come out the gate hot, let's say, and you make 10 calls and 2 or 3 people are really interested and want to follow up, you can't get too high of like, oh, I'm killing it. And then you can't get 100 no's and be like, I got to give up. I'm losing my mind, right? Yeah. The ebbs and flows. There it is, right? So I just sort of say that high and that low and maintaining on that roller coaster, right? It was something I would sort of say in that psychology of while the lows are hard, don't go too high either. Ray, you got more on that?
I think Dunkel's description was probably the best description I've ever heard, really, quite frankly, about cold calling. Again, I started my career cold calling in 1991, actually. It's changed a lot, right? It has changed a lot. Where you can't really get as many people on the phones. However, you have mobile access now, which can be a good or bad thing. There's obviously some technology where you're going to have the filters say your name before you can get through. There's going to be certainly challenges there. But to say that you're going to get one yes out of 100 and the 99 no's are feedback is amazing. I think it makes a lot of sense. I would argue that the 99 no's are not no's. They're just objections. And it's a no for now. And if you're not taking another approach to touching these folks, you're probably using a singular attack method, which is going to be less effective, right? So just understand that those no's are not no's. They're your future customers. I have a story to tell. It's a goodie. I think I've shared it before on the podcast, but I had a telemarketing department in my electrical business, and I was a member of BOMA and IRM and CAI, and a couple of those folks didn't really appreciate us cold calling and telemarketing to them. And one gentleman said to me, called me privately and said, if you call me one more time, I'm going to blacklist your company from ever doing business with our company, and I'm going to badmouth you and BOMA, and I'm sick of it. So, I went back to the cold calling department. I tore up the note card, by the way, because we didn't have computers back then. We had index cards. And I said, do not call this guy ever again. Are we clear? Well, unbeknownst to me, they called him 2 weeks later and he gave him a service ticket. Think about that. He was going to blackball me. But yet, sometimes your most engaged prospects or people that are as intense might be some of your better prospects, quite frankly. And I actually made a joke to him about that. He's like, I was serious. Today you guys call me in a bad mood. You guys call me all the time. And I just said, hey, we're trying to grow our business. Like, that's what we're trying. It's one of our strategies. And he's like, yeah, then you hit me like 2 weeks later and I actually needed it. I needed the service. So the situation, one of those 99s became a yes. And not only become a yes, became a working ticket, not an opportunity to put a bid out, right? So again, you're going to get those no's, but those 99 no's are potential future customers. And you have to stay consistent and diligent. And if you don't even start. If you don't plan on continuing, don't even start. because this isn't something you're just going to do in 1 month to make your pipeline grow. You need a strategy around this.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, it made me think, cold calling's like a muscle. You got to work it. It's so funny because you can't, to your point, you can't just jump in and out. And I've tried to do that, right? I've been trying to get back on the phone a little bit more just because I enjoy it. Um, and you got to get your reps in, right? But to your point, I mean, it's all about being consistent. It's all about being persistent, right? And then resilient as well, right? You just got to keep going. You just got to keep picking up the phone. So, all good, feedback there.
Yeah. I got one here, Ray, that you kind of gave a second ago, and you said it right at the beginning of maybe things have changed. We had index cards. Now we have Salesforce. You mentioned mobile, like, oh, phones, and we can get them on their mobile device, and kind of going a little off agenda here, or outline. But, I think it's a really great, quick talking point to get some feedback on. And you mentioned it, and that is calling mobile phones. I've talked to people who are like, ooh, I hate it. Don't do it. Do it. You know what I mean? Any commentary from the group on, hey, we found this guy's cell phone in the BOMA directory or wherever, right? What does that look like for everybody here? Thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't think we would be in business if we didn't have access to cell phone numbers. Just being honest. I mean, I think it's the great differentiator. Especially, with the advent of newer technologies where you can have a local area code. And I'm just speaking to our business, right? So if we're calling to Dallas, I can have a 214 number, right? And it looks like a local area code. That person's more likely to pick up the phone. Now, obviously for our clients, right, dealing in, the regions they work in, it's a different story. People are going to pick up their cell phone more than likely, right? Now, again, there's caveats to all of that. But again, I think it's critically important. I never got super into texting, right, on the initial jump. I know some people do that or follow up with a text. Hey, just wanted to follow up. I think that can be really, really compelling, right, in certain avenues and certain prospects. But yeah, I mean, look, cell phone numbers, like I said, we wouldn't be here today without that.
Brian, do you remember, and apologies if anybody out there listening was resulted from this as a customer, but way back in the day, do you remember when we could actually change the caller IDs so I could make it look like CBRE was calling? Oh, yeah. And so it would say like, we're like calling plumbers and painters, and it's like CBRE Dallas is popping up on their caller ID. And they're like, hello. And then we're just, hey, this is AltaVista. Yeah. I think they did away with that, but I mean, for a while, that was a very effective cold calling, the most effective cold calling strategy of my career, when you could just kind of manipulate that.
Yeah, it was called spoof card.
Yeah, spoof card. There you go. Spoof card, out of business, maybe.
That was a $1 billion business, but
yeah, that was a big one. Ben, you call cell phones a lot. What's your general consensus these days when you get someone on their cell phone?
Look, I think these days people are more understanding in 2026 that their cell phone is going to be readily available. I believe that if you're professional about it and you're being kind and you're having that conversation, people are way more apt to have that. You'll get one every once in a while. How did you get my cell phone number? I believe it's as easy as just explaining, how it came about, whether it was the BOMA directory, the IRM, whatever it was. They're more open to have that conversation, and it's much easier to have that conversation than going through an office line.
I think the fact that your prospect is wondering how you got your cell phone information is probably the funniest thing. You should say, well, I know your credit card information too. I mean, give me a break. Your cell phone information is live, man. That is right there. Look, I was talking to my son. My son works for AltaVista. He's in the cold calling department, and he and I were chatting the other day about that. And I said, Jake, you don't remember having a house phone, but when I was your age, actually even probably my 30s, you would come home from work at night, and your house phone would ring, and you know who was calling?
MCI
WorldCom. Every night. 20 times a night trying to get you to switch. If Talk about like really annoying people. The government actually banned them and they put a do not call list together. You could sign up for it. But look, what's the harm? What's the real harm if you reach out to somebody's cell phone and they yell at you and they scream at you and they say, "Hey, I'll get you banned from Iron and Boma," which didn't happen, by the way. What's the harm? Hey, I'm trying to grow my business. I'm looking to fill a need. I'm just checking in. I'm sorry I caught you on a bad day. Never call me again. Okay, you can choose not to make that call. I'm fine. That, that's your prerogative. But I'm going to say if it's your target customer, you're going to have to continue to target them. I mean, nobody wants to be marketed to. No, if you ask anybody in America, do they want to be marketed to? Most will say no. Some people love it. Some people love that Facebook kind of knows what you like and they send relevant ads. I mean, because they listen to your conversations and they use your Google search. Like, of course, they're going to send you relevant ads. But in general, most people don't want to be marketed to. And it's your job to grow your business, to have a consistent marketing plan. And if you're only using mail or email or you're only using cold calling, it's not going to work. You need an integrated strategy. We talk about this all the time. I also want to talk about the timing because that's for me. I hear this from clients all the time. Well, why would I cold call now? There's snow on the ground. I'm an asphalt company. Wrong, wrong, wrong. We had a client in Minnesota who told us that he doesn't need to market his asphalt services in December, January, February. We dug in, we dug in. We were right. He was wrong. He admitted he was wrong. Marketing doesn't stop. If you stop marketing, it's not a light switch. You cannot turn it on and off. It's a snowball. The more you do it, the bigger it gets. And so if you're going to do cold calling, work in other marketing strategies to touch these folks, whether it be a digital ad, whether it be an email, and keep your brand in front. Good things will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Definitely all got to be integrated. We're talking about plans, preps, who we're calling, cell phone numbers, where'd you get the information? I'm going to segue it over to let's talk about preparation. And, Ben, why don't you talk about how you prepare?
Yeah, I think the preparation is probably the biggest aspect of cold calling because you need to know who you're cold calling. So I think that even putting 5 minutes of research into someone's company, figuring out what services they provide, what areas they service, that will do you more justice than just ripping through and making 50 calls in, call it 10 minutes. So I'm a big believer in, researching who you're calling and understanding what their needs may be and kind of anticipate that.
Cool. Do you show up in the morning knowing who you're going to call that day?
I do. Yeah, I put a lot of preparation in, whether that's, my Excels, whether that's our, CRM that we use. But understanding, who am I going to be calling today is huge.
What day of the week do you get gas?
Sundays, always.
I wasn't going to steal that thunder from you, Ray. I thought about leading with that one, but I was like, I know he's going to bring up the Sunday gas, but I do think that speaks volumes.
Yeah. Winners prep on Sundays. Winning salespeople, winners in general in life prep. They don't just get in their car on Monday morning haphazardly and drive to work and try to get there on time. If that's what you're doing, you're not going to be successful. Sorry. I mean, look at what winners do. They prepare. They know who they're going to call. They get to work early on Monday morning and they get started. The people that come in and they don't know who they're going to call, they're getting coffee. Sorry, you're losing. And again, I go back to when I was in sales and I got to work 10 minutes late in my first job. And Lee Weinstein, who I've mentioned before, said, "Hey, why were you late today?" I had to get gas. Winners get gas on Sunday. Winners prepare on Sunday. I still do it today. I've been doing this for 35 years. And every time I do something in the middle of the day that's going to disrupt my routine, it's counterproductive to my success. And like a good buddy of mine's in Florida right now, he wants to have lunch today, but lunch is going to interrupt my business productivity. So I said, I can't meet you till after work today. He's like, "You're semi-retired and you live in Florida." I'm like, "I know, but if I break my routine, I can't do my job or I can't, film this podcast." Right. So again, routines are so critically important to the success. And that preparation that Ben's talking about is not only so important to who you're going to call, but your mental state, because the more prepared you are, the better you're going to be. if you're on somebody's website and you see that they've purchased a new shopping center, right? And you're saying, wow, these guys just bought this new center. I know there's some work to be had. And hey, I'm not interested. Well, I know you bought a new center down in, Lanham, Maryland. Have you secured all your renovation work for that? Well, that's a great conversation to have versus just blindly calling somebody, right? I mean, I could call one of our prospects and say, hey, I noticed you're trying to grow your service department. You just added a new service manager. Do you have a strategy to help grow that service department? That's a great cold call versus scripting out what you think you can say to 100 people and be successful. Now, again, you may not get that data or that information, but the preparation is going to assist you in getting the information you need to having a successful cold call.
Yeah, and I think for our customers, that adaptability and that kind of knowing and preparation is really important. So like Ray, when you were an electrician, if you're calling apartments and condos, I'm assuming the electrical needs are a lot different than if you were calling the McCormick Spice plant and the terminal docks at the harbor or a shipping center, right? Like the needs are going to be different by property type. So that kind of knowing who you're calling, what they need, where they need it, et cetera, really just speaks to the value of prep, right? Because, and I think flexibility too. If you call, you got to tweak it. You got to change it up. The talk track might have to have a little variation to it, right? If you call someone who runs an apartment building and you're talking the way you'd talk to a plant manager at the McCormick Spice Factory, you might not have the best conversation, right? So that kind of knowing and adaptability really important there.
That's really important actually, because a lot of our success at McLaughlin Electric was we'd hit somebody, they'd have a service call. The Wyndham Hotel in Baltimore, I think we called those guys once a week. The guy was cool. He let us, he talked to us. He said to my guy, today's your lucky day. He's like, I got a service call. If you can get here before XYZ Electric, I won't say their name, it's your job. And so we hustled down there and we got the work. We did $100,000 in business with them the next year, and we owned the account because of our performance on that service call. But when we were calling McCormick Spice, right, an industrial plant, they have in-house electricians to take care of all their maintenance needs. So it wouldn't have made sense to target that. We might want to say, hey, do you have any projects that are coming up that you're going to have to take outside of the in-house team? Just changing it up a bit. So it's a really good point.
Yeah, absolutely. Prep too, right? So Ben, when you started at AltaVista really as an account executive, probably a lot more time to be focused on cold calling. Bryan Dunkel was like, hey, I'm trying to get a little more back into my day, but it's hard without the reps. How do you prepare your day a little bit to be like, are you blocking times? Or are you building in the morning? When are you calling? What does that look like, right? Because to Ray's point about the interruption of lunch, that can be difficult, but you've grown in your role, you manage, you're doing your own sales presentations, but you still got to find time to get that going. So talk about that from a prep standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's just understanding, your calendar before the week starts, right? Understanding when you're going to have longer meetings, like a podcast from 10:30 to 12:30, right? I got here this morning. I got here at 7:30, and I really focused on making my dials from 8:45 to 10. Right. So I think it's just understanding, right, what your schedule looks like and being able to really break out time to focus on, that business development activity.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question to Ben?
Yeah.
Ben, so you've been at AltaVista for what, 3 years?
Almost 4.
Almost 4 years. Okay. So what gives you like the motivation to still want to cold call? Like, I want to get in your head. And I know you love getting new business and watching our customers be successful and certainly making more money. But be very candid. Like, what's your motivation to get in there and do the work?
Yeah, my motivation, I really think it stems from just being a competitive person in general. And, sales is a very competitive environment. I always want to sell more than the person sitting next to me. So I think it's just really being driven in that sense. I also just happen to really love cold calling. I think it's fun every day. You never know what you're going to run into. Obviously, you'll have, those days where you run into 50 no's. But then there's going to be days where you close a deal off of a conversation that you didn't think was going to close. So I think it's just, a combination of the excitement, the competitive nature of sales, and also just being driven to be successful in your career.
And so let's be very candid though, because I love that answer. That was fantastic. But your economics, I know that you look at your economics of your paycheck and where you sit relative to your peers, there's got to be some drive there on the economics.
There's a lot of drive on the economic side. Absolutely. I don't think anyone gets into sales not thinking about the economic sides. I will always I look at my commission on a monthly basis, and then every deal I close, I pretty much just calculate that myself. So I understand, what my structure looks like, right? Money is a big driver in sales. And I think, like I said, you'd be crazy to not think that. But that's the most exciting part.
Well, I think that's a really important comment. And I'm going to just jump in with something because there's two things there. The first thing is finding a money motivated person for sales, obviously very important, right? What I'm going to say there is, leadership teams need to understand the value of people that have the ability to cold call and do this outbound and generate something and take it from, I just built a list of names and then I did the outreach and now I've created a customer, right? And making sure that we're understanding that appropriately from leadership, right? Because in talking to people and a lot of salespeople, they'll say, well, cold calling is the last thing I do, right? Oh, calling 10 people is the last thing on my list. And now, is that because maybe they get to a point in their career where they have enough happening, they're busy, there could be a lot of reasons for that. But if the financial motivation remains high to find that new business and do that outreach, maybe that prospecting doesn't always start falling to the bottom of the list, or the thing you don't do at the end of the week because it's now Friday, right? So I just think a really interesting point to throw in there as you bring up, hey, I am motivated by success and I want to be financially successful, but you do hear it falls down the list for a lot of people. Well, it's just something to think about.
Yeah, I'm gonna even stress even more that cold calling makes millions. Sorry. It may not be the most glamorous job, right? But I'm 56 years old. I've got 5% of my friends that are excessively wealthy, and 90% of them started as cold callers. Think about that. 90% of them, because they went on to build great businesses. They went on to be amazing communicators. If you can pick up the phone and call somebody and engage a conversation and 2 days later close a deal, you can do anything. Sorry.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And so people who say I do cold calling last, you're not refining your skills. My son wants me to jump on a cold call with him when he's down in Florida. I said, Jake, I haven't cold called in a long time. You're probably better at it right now than I am because you're really into what's going on. I mean, keeping those skills fresh if you're in sales, because again, I'm not in sales anymore. I still like to think I could sell. Should push come to shove, but keeping those skills fresh is going to make you a better salesperson.
Well, it's the old adage, I have this one poster in my one office. It's everybody wants to eat, but few will hunt, and that's the differentiator. If you can pick up the phone, if you can, make something out of nothing, right? You will always have value, especially in the advent of AI, right? Still going to have to be people picking up the phone. So, it's not going away.
Yeah. And Ray,
how many offices do you have? I mean,
yeah,
Well, look, I'm a successful cold caller. I got a lot of them.
by the way, Bryan Dunkel is a successful cold caller because that's what he did at AltaVista, and now he's a 16% owner of a $20 million company.
That's right.
And he wouldn't, if he wasn't a successful cold caller, when he asked to buy a piece of the business, I would have said no chance.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? So yeah, cold calling is not a negative. And yeah, people think with AI, there's going to be AI agents dialing people. I just don't think that it's going to replace lead gen. You may have AI agents contacting customers to give them an update on their service request. That would be really cool, right? Hey, this is the AI agent from XYZ Electric. Wanted to let you know your job at 1622 Park Heights Avenue is completed. If you have any other needs, give us a call or click, you can actually communicate with that agent. But as far as like a cold call, somebody who's new business gen, I don't think you're ever replacing a cold caller. That's my opinion.
I was going to jump
It's when
into.
it's an agent, you're not going to want to engage.
I was going to say that my probably favorite part of the cold call is the human element of it, which kind of goes off of your point saying, AI, I just don't see it wiping it away simply because the human element is so important, right? Being able to ask questions, understand someone's business. I think that is just critically important to a successful cold call.
If you want to see the absolute like pinnacle of frustration, just come watch me try to call the pharmacy for a prescription refill. Because I just have to yell, speak to the pharmacist 17 times to get through the AI agent. So until they correct that and you can just call up and get through pretty quickly, I think we're a long way off. But I totally agree that that human quick interaction is a key part of it. As we talk about making the calls, right? And Ray, you had said something that I was kind of going to jump on there. You got to be good. You got to get them engaged. You have to do this, right? When we get someone on the phone, right? How are we hooking them? How are we uncovering that need quickly? Like, we get one shot, the guy's going to answer and we got that elevator. What does that look like?
I'll go first. I think each call is different. One thing I wanted to say prior to this is think of your services as a little different than you think. You think when you're cold calling, you're bothering somebody. Our email marketing business is incredibly successful, and our partner that runs the backside of that, he always says, "Hey, we're making your life easier." I love when he says that. He's like, "We're just making your life easier. We're giving you a vendor," right? Think about you're getting into this business, and your service is valuable, and you're trying to make this person's life easier. You're trying to help them accomplish their goals, not sell them something. It kind of helps your mindset, right? So think about that first. But once you get in there, each call is different, and you should have a script, because if you're new at this game, you're not going to be able to pivot. So you do need a script to work with some good opening questions, but you need to be able to pivot away from the script and flow with the conversation. Another thing about objection handling is that in the last 30 years, I haven't been hit with an objection in a meeting or a phone call or face-to-face or any conversation that I couldn't handle. It's not that I have all the answers. I just know how to handle objections. And so you have to be an expert at objection handling. And this is something that we need to look at our lives. Like, I watch people that are really good in conversation and dialogue, but they struggle on a cold call because it's like a confidence thing. So if you're talking about why the Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl next year because you're a huge fan, and you can get in an argument with a Steelers fan about why we're going to be better than you, then you should be able to handle an objection on a cold call, because we're not going to win the Super Bowl next year. Nor the Steelers probably. But I watch people that are so emphatic in their thoughts, right? That they can tell you why, and they can give you every counterpoint to why their thought is right. But yeah, you get them on a phone and they freeze up. And you just have to be fluid in how you handle those. Everything's an objection. Everything is an objection. Any call you're having, any conversation you're having that has a discrepancy in it is an objection. And successful people understand how to handle objection.
Absolutely. Ben, what do you do to set the hook quickly, right? Because again, it could be that objection early on, right? It could be that quick hit, right? Like, hey, I don't need this. I'm sure you call people, hey, this is what we do. I don't need that, right? What's the quick kind of, talk about that?
Yeah, I think the quick hook, and what's really important is like the energy and the confidence that you bring within that first, call it 10 to 15 seconds of a cold call. Because if you can sound like you're a familiar voice to them, where it's not like I'm, a random person giving you a call, I think that really kind of sets their tone down a little bit and puts their defense off. And then you obviously give our value add, whether it's AltaVista, whether it's a service-based contractor calling a property manager. So I think it's that first 10 to 15 seconds is huge.
Yeah, one thing I've always found powerful for me was speaking in their language, right? And as soon as if you're calling a landscaper and you're like, hey, we can help you grow your recurring maintenance and enhancement business, you've just put something right in their language, right in their terminology, and you've almost qualified yourself to them pretty quickly, where you're speaking to them in their need, right? I know that's kind of an example for us, and it might take me a second to figure out how you do that if you're an electrician calling a property manager, right? Again, it's knowing the customer, knowing the list, prep, all those things. But I always have just thought that really early in that conversation, as you're kind of just getting going, if you're talking their language, I think that's a big, quick differentiator that can help kind of set that to just kind of get the dialogue going. I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts on this.
I think that's a phenomenal point, really, because like you said earlier, the needs of each call are going to be, or prospect are going to be different. Each call is going to be different. And any way you can add validation early on, right? Early on to say, are you looking to grow your electrical maintenance business, or your recurring HVAC work, or your LED lighting division, right? Whatever it might be that they're trying to grow, I think you've added credibility yourself. I think that's a critical function.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. These deals are won and lost. I mean, these first 10 to 15 seconds, right? And that's the whole idea. You got to get people to keep talking, right? You need that next 10 seconds, the next 10, right? And that's my whole thing. It's, once you've qualified yourself, once you've identified a need, right? Then it's all about asking questions. You have to ask the right questions to get the right feedback. And we always talk about asking open-ended questions. The right questions are going to give you the ammunition on how you can fill in the gaps, right? Whether you are an elevator company, a marketing company, you got to understand the right questions lead to the right answers. Take really good notes and then present your value add. How can you help this property manager? How can you help this client figure out what their needs are, right? And that goes with questions, listening, notes.
Yeah.
I think to the note point, the realization that you're going to close this deal on the first cold call, contrary to my 22-year-old thinking, what if I close on my first day? I said that'll be a really bad close, by the way.
Yeah.
But those notes are what's going to feed the next call. Hey, Joe, the last time we talked, you were struggling to grow your commercial electrical maintenance division. Is that still a challenge for you? Right? That's a great conversation to have. If you didn't take copious notes and you weren't, your next call is not going to be very good. So uncover the need on call one, take great notes, and then be prepared for call two. And then the process is whatever it is. You want to get to a webinar, you want to get to a face-to-face meeting. You have all these notes, and then you sit down face-to-face. I remember we used to take my my telemarketers notes on the note cards. And our process was, okay, get Ray a meeting for the electrical business. So they'd get a meeting with the mall general manager. I'd go sit. I'd say, well, they told the cold caller that the last guy dropped the ball because he couldn't get there on time. He didn't have a 60-foot bucket truck. He had to rent equipment to service, and the costs were too high. And so I'd start the conversations. Well, tell me about your current maintenance situation. How do you service your pole lights? I already knew the answer. Oh, that's a sore subject, she said. We're paying for rental equipment. We feel like we're getting charged $900 for a daily lift rental. I could close right now, or a good salesperson could sit there and wait. So those notes, our current provider, they don't have same-day service. Do you guys have same-day service? Of course we do. I already asked the question, I knew the answer. They give you everything on the first call or the second call. Then you get the face-to-face, and you're a great salesperson because you asked the right questions.
Yeah. And I think the really important thing there,
Guys, simple. How many deals did I close? And this true story, I'm not making this up. How many customers did I close once I got the meeting from the telemarketer? What you guess?
all of them.
I closed 100% of them. Now, I wasn't closing $1 million electrical jobs. I was closing the opportunity to do business. But we got at least a service call out of every single meeting because we were prepared. We didn't go in there just thinking, oh, let's just see what this is. We had a couple bad meetings where the guy didn't even know why we were in the room. We still closed it, actually. Asked Nichols about Shoppers Food Warehouse.
Yeah.
We pretty much jammed the service. We took a service call off his desk. And I'm like, how about I do this one? And he goes, that's in Delaware. I said, yeah, we'll do it. So we had to drive to Delaware. We had to change a light bulb. It was like $8,000 because we had to send a bucket truck to Delaware. I had to charge the guy like $500 just to make it look right. But yeah, you go in prepared,
I
right?
won't bring up our meeting with St. John's Properties, Ray.
Yeah. It's like the worst thing in my life, but hey, lessons learned.
Um, I think one thing that I've gotten out of this part is like the cold call framework of this and this. And it was, hey, we're not calling to close on the first one. And so just as we talk through this and we talking about effective strategies for cold calling, when you pick up the phone, if it's touch one, what's the objective? What are you trying to have be the outcome of call one? If it's call two, what's the desired outcome? If it's call three, if it's the discovery call, if it's, do you know what I mean? Like, I think you've had these 2 or 3 quick conversations. You've talked to the guy for a few minutes here and there, but now I think that what are we trying to end this call with is a really important part of it, right? And I think for our customers, is it a face-to-face meeting? Is it a bid opportunity? What does it look like, right? I think that's a really important thing as you kind of go into it as part of the prep is almost what's the finish line look like in your mind? What's that best case finish line? And then how are we building our framework of our call backwards, right? Because again, I think for AltaVista, it's a different outcome than it might be for XYZ Electric or ABC Roofing or, you know what I mean? I just think it's different. So I think knowing that before you go in is really important.
I think, again, that's a really great point. I think on every call or every touch point, you're looking for some sort of micro commit, right? And that can be as simple as, can I send you over my insurance requirements? Or, hey, can I send you a brochure on what we do? Can I meet you on site? Can I show you examples of what we've done, right? At different commercial properties. From our perspective, it's, hey, can I send you some references? Can we schedule another call to discuss, how we can be an extension of your business? Can we get a meeting, right? Can I be face to face? So again, those micro commits, and every call is going to be different as we've talked about, but that's really important as you just progress until a sale.
Yeah, one of the big keys, right? That's the tactical piece. So, pre-commits, micro commits, whatever you can get, you've got to, you always have to get something out of a call, like get a commit, get a commit for the future meeting, get a commit for sending brochure. Like, I know the guy wants me off the phone. Can I at least send you some information and then follow up? And the prospect says, yeah, I got to go, send it. If it's the right prospect, I'm going to blow him away with what I send him. I'm going to blow him away. I'm going to send him a handwritten note. I'm going to send him a great package. I might send him something that's got my logo on it. And I'm going to call him back and say, did you get my package? He's going to change his tune. A lot of people are like, well, he just blew me off. He did blow you off. But what did you do with it? You're not only going to win on the call, right? Sometimes the winning's after the call and what you do afterwards. Handwritten thank you. It's an A prospect. You need this customer. There were customers at McLaughlin Electric that I needed to do business with. And so when we called and they said, well, we're using, I won't give you the actual name, but there was a fast growing bank in Baltimore. They were just growing like crazy. They're buying everything. The guy ended up not doing so well eventually. Maybe running for office, actually. I'll let you know about that later. So you guys got to figure out who this is. But they were growing so fast, we had to get in there and do business with these folks, and they just didn't want us. We have a electrical contractor, and so we used a wedge, and the wedge was they didn't have an aerial truck, and we used that as our wedge on our cold call because we knew they didn't have. We knew who they used. We knew what their properties looked like. We're like, hey, how are they servicing your aerial work? They don't have a bucket truck. They don't. That's how we wedged our way in. I'll never forget the call. My Mark Cadell, who worked for me, comes running down the hallway screaming, I've got him on the phone. Pick up, pick up. So I literally get on the phone. I'm like, hey, what's going on? He knew who I was. He's like, why do you keep calling me? I'm good. I go, well, who's doing your area work? He goes, they can't handle it. I go, can I just have a shot at the area work to show you what I can do? We got it. 2 months later, we owned the whole customer. That we did $250,000 a year maintenance work with them for the next 10 years. So again, that all stemmed. McLaughlin Electric had one customer who just like, look, I'm a sales guy from Xerox. You guys, I was a electrical contractor. I twisted wires together for a couple summers. We had one customer in, I think it was 1995 when we started, and we sold the business in 2008, and we had 900 commercial customers that a bulk of them, some came from referral, but a bulk of them came from the telemarketing department. If 80% of them, and it started with a service. Think about that.
Yeah.
So that's how effective that telemarketing department was for our growth. In fact, if we didn't have the telemarketing department, we wouldn't have grown. I mean, referrals are great. They're the best way to grow, but it's the slowest way to grow. And it's the most unpredictable way to grow because you don't know where the referral's coming from. So if you cold call and you target the right folks, you're going to do really well.
100%. So we've walked through a lot today. I'm going to wrap us up, but we got one last topic to kind of chat on here really fast. And this is just questions that I think come from what we get is one, frequency, right? Is there any rule, any this, any that, right? Like if you're, obviously if you talk to someone and they say, call me in 2 weeks, we get the frequency answer, but is there any kind of golden rule or any, guidance on frequency? And then I also think follow-up strategy and kind of taking this thing full circle back to Ray, some comments, Ray, you made at the beginning about supporting tactics, right? So what's the frequency look like? What do the supporting tactics look like? And then maybe how do you bring that all into one? So like, hey, Ben came in and called this guy Monday morning. What's that roadmap look like from there? Anyone want to try and tackle that?
I can tackle that.
Go for it. Tell us what you do.
So my frequency is really I'm very professionally persistent, right? I get told that pretty often. I think I learned that from you two, especially, right? So I think it's about, right, the cold call itself, but it's also about supporting it with an email, making sure that it's relevant to the person that you're sending an email to. I'll always connect with someone on LinkedIn. I will ping them with a message on LinkedIn. So I think that as long as you're, professionally persistent about it, right? I think that you can definitely stay on top of people, a certain amount.
Yeah, I was going to say touch points are key. We talk about this all the time, and this all goes back to building the right list, knowing who you want to do business with and knowing who the right targets are, because it's just working backwards. Who do I want to work with? Then I'm going to build a plan and a framework, and then I'm going to stay in touch with them across multiple channels. Right? If you're only using one channel, as Ray said, you're not going to be effective, right? Too many calls back to back to back, not great. But a call, a LinkedIn message, an email, a thank you card, right? A package, as Ray says, another call behind that. We always talk about these touch points, 8 to 13 touch points before you probably get a sale, before you maybe get a meeting. But again, you don't want to waste your time on the wrong prospect or the wrong person. That's why it's not just a one size, it's everything. You got to have the right list. You got to know how to cold call the right way. You got to have good frequency, good touch points. And then at the end of the day, when you're planting those seeds, then you get your foot in the door, the wedge. That's how you build these long-term customers.
One thing I think we haven't covered is sort of who's going to use this. I don't think that our clients in the commercial side or the residential side are going to have a in-house telemarketing. I know that there's companies that'll make the outbound calls for you. I believe those are fairly ineffective. They try to jam appointments in, and that's not what we're preaching here. So most importantly, if you're going to do this as a sales rep or an owner, commit to a number of calls a day. Ben, how many calls do you make in a day?
Around 50 usually.
Okay, 50. What's a record in AltaVista, do you know, for outbound calls?
Yeah, I think it's 134 set by your son.
Okay, good. At least he's doing his job. I could say he needs to get better if he was in for a call. No, but no, my point in asking that question is no, none of our clients are going to commit to making 54 calls a day, and they're not going to commit to making 134 calls. But if you're a sales rep today, figure out how many calls you can make at the end of the day, realistic, really good, where you close your door, you go down to prospecting, and you're going to make 15 calls a day for the next 24 months. Your income is going to skyrocket. So if you're an existing salesperson and you're not doing this, you're missing it. Calling up an outbound company to make these calls for you, in my opinion, is asinine, because they're going to charge you $4,000 a month to do it, and they're just jamming meetings on your books. That's all they do. But to go in there and build relationships, we're not trying to build or get a meeting, we're trying to build a relationship for recurring business. That's what we're doing here. It might sound like we're cold callers and we're trying to pirate a deal out of you, but the end goal is to have a long-standing business relationship. And if you're making the 10 or 15 calls a day, it's going to change your business. The other thing that I believe is most important is everybody saw me do this. And that's my thing at AltaVista, right? You got to manage the highs and lows of business. You have to manage the highs and lows of life. Don't get too high when we have a win. That's the kiss of death. But don't get too low when you have a loss. That's how I handle my life. That's how I handle my business. That's how I handle my relationships. But if you don't handle your cold calling that way, you are done. You are done. So lessons in life is this wave of highs and lows and emotional distress. You've got to learn how to deal with it. Don't get emotional about a no. It's business is not emotion. And if you get caught in emotion, you're going to lose. I don't care if you're trading stocks or you're buying a business or you're a cold caller. Do not let the emotions affect what you are doing. What you are doing is building a business. And you're building a business based on cold calling. AltaVista started in I'm old. Started in 2011. I'm thinking about McLaughlin. McLaughlin Electric started in 1995. We sold the company in 2008. We had zero revenue in 95. We had $4 million in revenue, all driven through cold calling. AltaVista started in 2011. The first couple of years, we were kind of just playing around. It's a $20 million business. Today, recurring revenue built upon what we're talking about today. Doesn't always work. We certainly call the wrong people sometimes. We certainly call the wrong customers. But the customers that we've embraced and we've engaged for 13 years or 12 years or 10 years, every single one of those came from a cold call. And they're trusting us with their website hosting, trusting us with their social media, they're trusting us with their SEO. They're asking our advice on what they should do with their businesses now. They have forgotten that it came from a cold call. We're building relationships. That's what cold calls do. It's building a relationship. It's not closing a deal and moving on. How many of the customers off of an email marketing lead are getting millions of dollars of revenue from that outbound email? They didn't think that's what it was. When the prospect responded, "Hey, yeah, I have a bid," it wasn't. They didn't think they were giving our client $5 million worth of asphalt work for the next 5 years. They had forgotten that's how it happened. The email was just an email that built a relationship, and that's what the cold call is. And you collect these relationships, and you go again and again and again, and you build a process around how this works, and you're going to build yourself a tremendous business. So everyone that says cold calling doesn't work, emailing doesn't work, we're live proof it does work. And we fail all the time, but we keep doing it. And we figure out ways to work around those failures. We don't get emotional about it. We're business people. We want to be business-like. We come up with different solutions. My son said to me, "Dad, this script doesn't work." Change it. Maneuver. You need a script. You need a script to start with, but then how do you modify it and then see what works and see what really is in that prospect's head and what their fears are and what their pain points are. If you can cover those, you build yourself a great business and you will create millionaires. That's how millionaires are created. Sorry. Unless you're a brain surgeon or, I don't know, give me another career, an anesthesiologist maybe, although AI might kill that one, they say. But, you know, you're in an opportunity to create a tremendous amount of wealth by being a great cold caller. And if you're going to do that, why wouldn't you do it well?
I'm going to let us close right there. I think that was very well said and a good thing. I would normally say anybody got anything else, but I think that's a pretty strong close to another episode of the AltaVista Angle. We appreciate everybody joining us today, and we look forward to having you back for a future episode.
Fantastic. Good job, everybody.